Alright guys, so today we're going to talk all about how to pose hands, specifically how I pose hands. So look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Posing hands for most photographers, including myself, is one of the hardest things that I ever had to deal with. When I work with my subjects, the most common question I get is, what do you want me to do with my hands? And my general response for the most part is, just leave it there. And the reason I say that is because at the time, I really have no clue with what I want to do with their hands. Posing for me starts with the foundation of the pose, which I will get into in another video. But basically, I want to come up with the core pose first, then focus on the hands. The reason posing hands was difficult for me was because I was trying to focus on the hands first and not trying to get the foundation right. Essentially, what I was doing was putting the cart before the horse. So what to do with hands? Posing hands starts with posing the hands last. I know that sounds weird, but there's so much other things to worry about on your subjects, like their clothing, their hair, their body position, their facial expression. So when it comes to hands, it's really best to save that last. Once your core pose is set, meaning your subject is standing up, sitting down, the expression is where you want it to be, the next thing to do is focus on your composition. Will you be including the hands, excluding the hands? Because if you're not including the hands, then basically you could exclude that from your composition. For me, posing hands all boils down to the intention. Closed fist, palm to the camera, a manic finger, etc. All these things have different meaning and messages. So if your core pose is projecting strength, then you may want your subject's fist to be closed. Most of my images, I try to project elegance. So my subject's hands would and should be elegant. If it wasn't elegant, then the messaging would be disconnected from the core pose. I think that disconnect is primarily why hands are so hard to pose, because in your mind, you know something is wrong, but you can't put your finger on it. So what I do is take a step back and determine if my subject's hands are telling me a different story than my core pose. Once you identify that disconnect, then you can fix it. So for the most part, I try not to touch my subjects, but if they're not getting the fingers or hands just right, and when I mean right, I mean the messaging is disconnected from the core pose, then I would ask for permission and I will get in there and make manual adjustments until the hands live in harmony with the core pose. Now, there are exceptions. With some hands, it just doesn't matter how you position them, it really doesn't look good. Some folks have the claw, which just simply means some folks have large hands or they have some type of distraction on their hands. At this point, you as the photographer would have to come up with some kind of creative cropping or posing that would help eliminate the distraction. Look, the bottom line, I could show you how I like to pose hands, which is elegant, but at the end of the day, if the core pose that you are trying to go for don't match up to the elegance of that hands, then it just simply becomes a distraction. So let's go through some elegant hand posing that I like to use, and hopefully it's helpful to you. So this is the palm example. So palm to the face is not so good. It looks like you're smushing the face. Bending the fingers ever so gently creates a beautiful gap exposing the jawline. Another example is the backhand to the camera. Having a female subject's backhand or fist facing the camera is too much of a distraction, especially when you're doing a very close portrait on the subject's face. Having the subjects turn the narrow part of their hand facing the camera is much more elegant. Back of the hand or fist facing the camera is appropriate for a man as it projects strength. Another example is hand under the chin. Having the subject's hands holding up the face, it gives the impression the subject is bored or the head is so heavy that they need to hold it up. By having the subject place their index finger, especially under the chin, so it's connect ever so slightly, creates a beautiful, elegant image. Another example is bending joints. This is a very small thing, but it makes the world of difference. For example, if your subject had their hands straight up and it was close to their face, if their hands were straight, the image would look weird. But if they simply bend the joint, it makes the world of difference. So another thing that people struggle with is if your subjects have no pockets. So most folks face this problem. So what do I do? One example is I put the hands on the hips, ensuring the joints are bent. Another example is one hand on the hips, the other hand could be bent 90 degrees in the air with the joints bent. Another example is forming shapes with their hands by creating a triangle for their face. Now my last example is lean them against a wall. Now you're open with even more hand positions, or you can repeat everything we just did. So in conclusion, posing hands is not so much about posing the actual hands, it's more about ensuring that the hands is in harmony with the core of your pose. If I tell all of you to go ahead and pose your hands the way that I want you to pose it, here's what will happen. You will begin to see a whole bunch of images with elegant hands and a disconnected message, because you're trying to connect elegant hands with maybe a core pose that's an action pose, or it might be some other type of messaging that you're trying to connect with your core pose, and you have these elegant hands, which is a complete distraction. Basically, there are no rules. They are just guidelines. So you as the photographer would have to notice any type of distraction, and if you do, you have to get in there and fix it. If you remember anything from this video, just remember that posing hands have to live in harmony with the core pose. Alright guys, so that is it. I hope my little experience on how I pose hands was helpful to you. If it was, please go ahead and give me a big thumbs up on this video. Put some comments down below and let me know what you think. Share this video with your friends and family. And if you got this far in this video and you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And stop being a stalker.